It's just past 5 p.m. here in India. Live from New Delhi, you're watching Dear India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Tanvi Taneja, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Good afternoon, Ollie.
Hello, Tanvi. It's 11:30 a.m. here in London, 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next half hour, we'll take you live to Brussels to get reaction from there to Donald Trump's comments on NATO, and we'll tell you who won the Finnish presidential election. First, the headlines.
India welcomes the release of 8 of its nationals from Qatar. 7 of them returned to New Delhi. Republicans blast former President Trump over threat to abandon NATO allies. EU Chief Borrell says NATO cannot be a carte military alliance.
Let's be serious. NATO cannot be an alliance à la carte. It exists or it not exist. But I'm not going to spend my time comment any silly idea that comes during this electoral campaign in the US.
Israel frees 2 Israeli hostages in Rafah amid airstrikes early today. Prime Minister Netanyahu says Israel should press Gaza offensive to free more hostages. And negotiations for a coalition government continue in Pakistan between former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's PMLN and Bilawal Bhutto Zardari's PPP parties. The government of India today welcomed the release of 8 Indian nationals in Qatar. 7 of the 8 have returned to India. A report.
In a major diplomatic victory, India secured the release of 8 Indian nationals who were sentenced to death in Qatar. 7 of the 8 nationals released by Doha reached New Delhi on Monday morning.
We deeply appreciate the decision of the Qataris government and the Amir to release them. We are happy to have 7 of those Indian nationals back. 8th Indian national has also been released, and we continue to work with the Qatar government to see how quickly his return to India.
Setting their foot back on the home soil on return, after several agonizing months of captivity, the 7 Indian nationals who were sentenced to death heaved a sigh of relief. They praised Prime Minister Narendra Modi, saying that their freedom could come only because of the intervention of PM Modi. They said they could breathe free due to the sustained diplomatic efforts at the behest of the Prime Minister of India to secure their release.
Without the intervention of Prime Minister Modi, it wouldn't have been.
We have waited almost 18 months to be back in India. We're extremely grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi ji. It certainly wouldn't have been possible without his personal intervention and that equation with the Emir of Qatar. I think we are grateful to the Government of India, the bottom of our heart, for the every effort that has been made, and this day wouldn't have been possible.
The Indian government expressed appreciation for the release of the Indian nationals, saying the government of India welcomes the release of 8 Indian nationals working for the Dehra Global Company who were detained in Qatar. 7 out of the 8 have returned to India. We appreciate the decision by the Amir of the State of Qatar to enable the release and homecoming of these nationals. Minister of State for External Affairs Meenakshi Lekhi echoed the sentiments, thanking the Qatar government for the cooperation in facilitating the release of the Indian nationals.
मैं प्रधानमंत्री जी का धन्यवाद और आभार प्रकट करना चाहती हूँ और साथ में कतर के अमीर का प्रधानमंत्री जी की इंटरवेंशन का लाभ जो है वो हम सबको मिला और अमीर ऑफ कतर जिन्होंने ये सज़ा को वापस लिया उनका भी आभार कि भारतीय वापस आए हैं। उनके परिवारजन लगातार बने हुए थे, हमारे से संपर्क में थे, तो परिवारजन भी और साथ में संपूर्ण भारतवासियों को इसकी हार्दिक बधाई।
This marks a significant diplomatic victory for India due to the complete turnaround in the situation when just 2 months back the Indian nationals were facing death penalty. As India celebrates their safe return, the episode stands as a testament to the power of diplomatic resolve and international cooperation in safeguarding the rights and freedom of Indian citizens.
And next, an update on Indian Navy's rescue missions. Responding to the distress call from Iranian fishing vessel, an Indian Navy mission deployed in the North Arabian Sea for maritime security operations provided damage control assistance and undertook strengthening of the hull, rendering the boat safe for further transit. Medical aid has also been extended to 3 injured crew members. The Indian Navy said that the ship was damaged allegedly due to a collision with a merchant vessel. On to Europe now. The remarks made by former US President Donald Trump on Sunday that the US might not protect NATO allies that are not spending enough on defense have prompted sharp rebukes from the White House and some of Trump's own fellow Republicans. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, the latest rebuke here coming from EU Chief Josep Borrell.
That's right, Tanvi. The European Union's foreign policy chief saying that NATO cannot be an a la carte military alliance dependent on the whims of the US president.
NATO cannot be a la carte military alliance. Cannot be a military alliance that works depending on the humor of the president of the US on those days. It's not yes, now yes, tomorrow no, it depends, who are you? Now, come on, let's be serious. Let's be serious. NATO cannot be an alliance a la carte.
And former US President Donald Trump had said that the US might not protect NATO allies that aren't spending enough on defense from a Russian attack. He said this at a rally in the state of South Carolina.
One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills. And the money came flowing in.
Well, the White House rejected Donald Trump's comments, terming it an appalling and unhinged set of remarks. Let's go now to DD India's Alex Carrier, who's joining us live from Brussels. Alex, what is NATO saying in response to Donald Trump's comments?
Well, Ollie, we've had a response from Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO, to these comments, saying that any suggestion that allies will not defend each other undermines all of our security, including that of the US, and puts American and European soldiers at increased risk, adding that any attack on NATO will be met by a united and forceful response. Jens Stoltenberg there commenting on this issue, pushing back on the 2 points that Donald Trump has been making, both in those comments that you heard and in the last few weeks. The first being, of course, that he would encourage Russia to do whatever it wants to those countries that are not meeting their target of spending 2% of GDP on defense, and the other that the US would not be defended by NATO allies should it be attacked. Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General, pushing back on both of those things. What's remarkable as well is that he commented on this at all. The Secretary General generally does not get involved in domestic political issues of NATO allies, and certainly does not comment on what candidates might say in a domestic election in an allied country. That gives you a sense of the seriousness of these comments, how seriously they're being taken here in Brussels by NATO and EU allies, but certainly taking that into account and pushing back on those comments made by Donald Trump.
And Alex, some strong words as well from the EU's foreign policy chief.
Yeah, you just heard him, Josep Borrell, talking about NATO not being an à la carte alliance, meaning that the United States cannot just pick and choose which elements of being part of NATO it wants. It can't choose to be defended by NATO allies, but then also choose not to defend certain NATO allies based on what they pay. It's also worth mentioning that the US is not by percentage of GDP, the biggest contributor to NATO. That is Poland here in the European Union and in Eastern Europe, spending nearly 4% of GDP to the US's 3.5%. And that's certainly a message that will be conveyed to the United States. Josep Borrell saying it can't be an à la carte alliance, saying that the alliance cannot rely on the humor, as he called it, and by that he means mood and whims of a US president changing their mind. So that's something that's going to be focusing the minds here in Europe. It's also worth mentioning that NATO has been pushing for more funding by the NATO allies. So in that sense, is broadly, at least on the issue itself, aligned with what Donald Trump has been saying, with reaching that 2% of GDP target by NATO allies. Many are trailing behind that, so the pressure here in Europe will be going up for them to meet that 2% target.
Alex, thank you. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country will not pass up any opportunity to free more captives from Gaza, and he insists sustained military pressure is necessary until total victory is secured over Hamas. This after Israel launched a special forces operation that freed 2 Israeli hostages in Rafah. The Israel Defense Forces conducted a joint operation with the country's domestic Shin Bet security service and special police unit.
We brought Luis and Fernando back home. In a joint rescue operation of the IDF, Israel Security Force, the Shin Bet, and the police SWAT team, we rescued Luis Harre and Fernando Merman, who were kidnapped from Nir Yelzak by Hamas on October 7. This was a complex rescue operation under heavy firing in the heart of Rafah, based on sensitive and very high-quality intelligence garnered by the military intelligence branch and the Shin Bet.
The head of the World Health Organization, Tedros Ghebreyesus, has reiterated his call for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been speaking at the World Government Summit in Dubai.
WHO continues to call for safe access for humanitarian personnel and supplies. We continue to call for hostages held by Hamas to be released, and we continue to call for a ceasefire.
Ukraine's air defense systems have destroyed 14 out of 17 Russian drones overnight. A Russian cruise missile was also destroyed. Russia launched missiles from its S-300 long-range surface-to-air missile systems into Ukraine. Ukraine says it will produce thousands of long-range drones capable of deep strikes, and says it has already set up 10 companies manufacturing drones. Ukraine's production levels and deliveries increased more than 120 times in 2023 as part of a broader wartime push. A narrowly divided US Senate has moved closer to passing a nearly $96 billion aid package for Ukraine, Israel and Taiwan on Sunday. This despite growing opposition from some Republican hardliners and Donald Trump. The Democratic-led Senate cleared the latest procedural hurdle and moved the foreign aid measure further towards an ultimate vote in the coming days. US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has been admitted to a critical care unit in Washington. Officials at the Walter Reed Military Medical Center say Austin was admitted for treatment of symptoms suggesting an emergent bladder issue. Austin has transferred the duties of his office to the Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks. Austin is scheduled to travel to Brussels on the 14th of February to meet with the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. US President Joe Biden has joined TikTok as he ramps up his re-election campaign. He made his debut with a short video using the NFL's Super Bowl to attempt to reach young voters ahead of the presidential election in November this year. Former Prime Minister of Finland, Alexander Stubb, has won the country's presidential election, defeating Pekka Haavisto of the Green Party. Stubb will be responsible for Finland's foreign policy, including its stance towards Russia. Finland joined NATO last year, and as president he will serve as Finland's commander-in-chief. Stubb replaces Sauli Niinisto, who is retiring after 2 6-year terms. Stubb is a member of the mainstream centre-right National Coalition Party and beat the country's former Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto from the centre-left Green Party in Sunday's runoff vote after securing 51.6% of the votes to Haavisto's 48.4%.
For us in Finland, foreign and security policy, we usually stay cool, calm and collected. We take care of our bit. Our defense spending is now this year roughly 2.3% of our GDP. We have a very strong defense. We're members of the EU and NATO, and of course we have a fresh defense cooperation agreement with the United States. All I can say is that election campaigns in Finland are fair and square. They are free and just. We just had a good 6-month period when 9 candidates challenged each other respectfully. For us, foreign security policy is existential, and it shall continue to be so.
And with the Finnish election, I will finish from London. Tanvi, back to you.
Thank you so much, Ollie. Ollie Barrett joining us all from London. You're watching Did India Global, still to come on the show. Sri Lanka and Mauritius launch India's instant mobile payment system, the UPI. Mauritius also introduces India's RuPay debit and credit cards. And have you ever heard of a noodle eating contest? Well, participants wolfed down buckwheat noodles during an annual contest in Japan, upholding an age-old tradition.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Back to India. The country's instant mobile payment system, called the Unified Payments Interface, or the UPI, has been launched in Mauritius and Sri Lanka. Mauritius has also launched India's RuPay debit and credit cards. The Prime Ministers of India and Mauritius and President of Sri Lanka jointly launched the services via video conferencing on Monday. The UPI settlement services for Indian nationals now become available in Sri Lanka and Mauritius, as well as for Mauritian nationals travelling to India. Further, the extension of the RuPay card services in Mauritius will enable Mauritian banks to issue the cards based on RuPay mechanism in Mauritius and permit settlements in India and Mauritius. Given India's robust cultural and people-to-people linkages with Sri Lanka and Mauritius, the launch of these services will benefit a wide cross-section of people through a faster and seamless digital transaction experience and enhanced digital connectivity between the countries. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that today is a special day for 3 friendly countries in the Indian Ocean region as they are enhancing their historic relations in a modern digital way.
मुझे खुशी है कि एशिया में नेपाल, भूटान, सिंगापुर और गल्फ में यूएई के बाद अब मॉरिशस से रूपे कार्ड की अफ्रीका में शुरुआत हो रही है। इससे मॉरिशस से भारत आने वाले लोगों को भी सुविधा होगी, हार्ड करेंसी खरीदने की जरूरत भी कम होगी। यूपीआई और रूपे कार्ड व्यवस्था से हमारी अपनी करेंसी में रियल टाइम कम खर्च पर और सुविधाजनक तरीके से भुगतान होगा।
The chairman of Sri Lanka's national payment network, Lanka Pay, Dr. Kenneth De Silva, also called it a great achievement by the two countries.
It is a great achievement by the two countries and the institutions involved in enabling this payment infrastructure possible. The central banks of India and Sri Lanka, together with the two institutions, the National Payments Corporation of India plus Lanka Pay of Sri Lanka, have come together to make this ecosystem possible.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will pay an official visit to the United Arab Emirates from 13th to 14th of February 2024. Foreign Secretary of India Vinay Kwatra, in a media briefing held in New Delhi, highlighted the strategic importance of this visit, emphasizing the strong and enduring ties between India and the UAE.
On 13th, soon after his arrival, Prime Minister's engagement would include meeting with His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the UAE. Following the ceremonial welcome and reception at the Presidential Palace, the two leaders will sit down for bilateral meeting, whereafter there would be exchange of agreements and understandings after the discussions between the two leaders.
The Indian Prime Minister will travel to Doha on February 14th after concluding his two-day visit to the UAE. During the visit, Prime Minister Modi will hold bilateral with the Emir of Qatar and other high dignitaries in the country.
Honorable Prime Minister will travel to Doha, Qatar on 14th February afternoon. During the visit, Prime Minister will hold bilateral meetings with the Emir of Qatar, His Highness Amir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, and other high dignitaries in Qatar. The bilateral relationship between India and Qatar that has been steadily growing includes a comprehensive span, including political ties, trade and investment linkages, a strong energy partnership, and ties in the field of culture, education, and security.
So as part of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 7th visit to the UAE on 13th and 14th of February, Prime Minister Modi will be addressing the Indian diaspora in an event in Abu Dhabi, as well as inaugurate the Babs Hindu temple there. DD India's Meghna Dev spoke to Indian ambassador to the UAE, Sanjay Sudhir, for more.
The much anticipated visit of the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to unfold in some time from now to the UAE. And to talk more on this, we are joined in by the Indian ambassador to UAE, Sanjay Sudhir, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for talking to DD India. This visit is very anticipated, also because there have been frequent high-level interactions between the leadership of both the countries. How do you see the significance of this visit?
It's a very significant visit. Although this is a very historical relationship, but in the last 19 years, it has undergone a major transformation. And this transformation has been guided by our leadership, Prime Minister Modi, and the UAE President, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. This is also involved, as you can presume, because this is a relationship steered and guided by the leaders themselves. It has involved a lot of visits. In the last 19 years, Prime Minister Modi would have visited, after the visit which starts tomorrow, would have visited 7 times. And His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed has visited India already about 4 times. So it's a very special relationship. How special is it? I'll just give you a flavor. In the last few months, India had invited the UAE as a special guest during its presidency of G20. Yeah. And when the UAE hosted COP28 in Dubai in December, India was the only country whose leader was invited to speak at the ceremonial welcome plenary. If you just go back a month, during the Vibrant Gujarat Summit, where UAE was the chief guest, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed addressed the plenary session there, which is a very rare thing.
With camera person Pramod Negi and my colleague Ashwini Mishra, this is Meghna Dev for DD India from Abu Dhabi.
Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Monday addressed the 606th meeting of the Central Board of Directors of the Reserve Bank of India, RBI, along with RBI Governor Shaktikant Das, in its customary post-budget meeting in New Delhi. Finance Minister highlighted the key thrust areas outlined in the interim union budget. The board also reviewed the global and domestic economic situation and outlook, including the challenges posed by geopolitical developments and global financial market volatility. Now, staying within Asia, in Pakistan, three main political parties intensified their effort to form a coalition government after the February 8th polls threw up a hung parliament amid allegations of rigging. Pakistan People's Party chairperson Bilawal Bhutto Zardari and its president Asif Ali Zardari held a meeting on Sunday with Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz President Shehbaz Sharif. The overall situation of the country and future cooperation were discussed, with the leaders agreeing to join hands for tackling political instability in the country.
Voters have given a mixed mandate. We can safely say that it is a hung parliament. The largest chunk of candidates who have been elected, they belong to the independent category. Most of them are PTI-backed candidates, but unfortunately, because they have been deprived of their election symbol, they cannot operate as a political party within the parliament. So the choice before them is either they form a separate new group or they join some other political party. So it is yet to be seen what's going to happen to them.
And now we take a look at what else is happening across the world. Heavy rain and floods affected some areas across Oman on Sunday and Monday. Oman's National Multi-Hazard Early Warning Centre at the Civil Aviation Authority issued warnings to citizens to take necessary precautions and avoid low-lying areas. The country has announced a day off, advising employees and students to stay indoors. The United Nations published a report on Monday saying that more than a fifth of the world's migrating species are at a risk of going extinct as a result of climate change and human encroachment. Human activities pose the biggest threat, impacting 70% of the species on the UN list. Habitat loss has affected up to 75% of the species. In Japan, at least 180 contestants from across the country participated in a noodle eating competition held annually in Hanamaki in northeastern prefecture of Iwate. Participants wolfed down buckwheat noodles during the contest, upholding an age-old tradition. The event was held without coronavirus-related restrictions for the first time in 4 years. And as we wind up this edition of DD India Global, we bring you the flavors of the Chinese New Year celebrations. A diverse array of light shows illuminated the festive spirit of the Chinese New Year, with spectacular scenes enchanting both locals and visitors. Boats adorned with vibrant lights showcased the majestic postures of dragons as they glided along the Xinjiang River in China's Hubei province. So that's it in this edition of DD India Global. Do join us for another edition of the show at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.